In the second part of this 5-part series, you join the pair of us where we left off, on TET France section 23. We only managed to cover around 1.5 kilometres in part 1, and I'm really hoping for a bit more progress in the next 15 minutes. As you can see, the tracks have opened up into some nice forest, and the ground appears to be a little more forgiving at the moment. Visibility of the trail is paramount to safety. Whether it's the ferns or low branches lapping across the front of the bike, or the muddy water hiding in the depth of a river or muddy puddle crossing. Maybe it's just a bend in the road that conceals that unseen hazard. I'm starting to feel a bit more comfortable on these open tracks. The speed is cooling both me and the bike, and my confidence returning after my earlier falls. The man in front will be happier now we've gained some momentum. These are the picturesque forest trails I dreamed about when I first thought of riding the TET. For the man in front they lack a challenge, but I'll enjoy it while I can. Riding trails like these is for me one of the real pleasures in life, and will bring me back to the TET for as long as I can pick up my PR7. Now, remember what I said about visibility. A few ferns are about to give me a wake-up call, as they are riding a substantial tree root that curves in a big arc parallel to the trail. Riding up the centre of the track meant I was just in the wrong position to hop over the root. The rear tyre had followed the root's arc and spun me flat across the trail. Just 800 metres after our restart, the trail had taken a swipe at me. Your first instinct is to get the bike up as soon as possible, and we can all pick our bikes up alone, can't we? My first feeble attempt was met with a little more resistance than I was expecting. I knew I was getting tired, having had to lift and manoeuvre my PR7 a lot more than on previous trips, but even so, failing to lift the bike on the first attempt was unexpected. It seemed surprisingly heavier than usual, which was a little worrying, as was the second attempt. The bike was wedged between two dirt banks, with its wheels slightly above the frame, effectively upside down. As there was no fuel spilling out, I had time to collect my thoughts. Taking off my helmet and gloves to cool down, and gulping in a large quantity of water from my backpack, I recover my breathing for the big push. So this is where we go over to David Bellamy in the Undergrowth, while I figure out my next move. Please enjoy the comings and goings of the wildlife while I regain my composure, or fast forward if you prefer. For those fans of Mr. Bellamy that are still watching, I think this would be a good time to reflect on the impact of and preparation for falling off your bike on the trail. What equipment should you be carrying, and how accessible is it? Is your phone, for instance, on your body, or 10 metres down a ravine on your bike? That would make a big difference if you're lying there with a broken leg or dislocated shoulder. If you're not badly injured, have you got the means to winch your bike back out of that gully? We all want to make our bikes as light as possible, but thinking it would never happen to me and not carrying a few essentials could leave you in a very dangerous situation if you are alone. Anyway, back to Mr. Bellamy and the wonders of nature. I was really surprised when I looked back at this section of video by just how many insects and how much activity there was taking place during my time on the ground. Enjoy. So, the pressure is on. I know I have limited energy at this point, and I have to get it up right this time. Hello, camera. What a relief, she's upright. A quick check and removal of attached flora, and we can think about getting it uncrossed to the trail. I'd been so focused on lifting the bike, I realised I hadn't checked out the culprit for my fall, hence a glance down the track. And now to straighten it up. As you can see, there's very little room for manoeuvre. Just enough to get some movement. At last, we're back on track. Because my PR7 has been lowered, if the ground is anything like towards uphill, as here, the bike is not over centre on the stand. The last thing I'll need now is to pick it up again. Richard finally lifts his head out of his route map and after 5 minutes realises I'm not there. I'm coming. Give me a minute. This adjustment and retightening of my rear camera housing was more significant than I realised at the time. Later in the series we will see why I prefer to use a security cable on my camera mounts that are out of the line of sight. Also, why giving your bike a quick check over whenever you make a short stop is advisable. The long walk of shame, back to collect my helmet and gloves. At least I'm still walking. As I said in part 1, the temperature is around 27 degrees C. My helmet and gloves are soaked with sweat, and the last thing I want to do is put them back on. The gear you wear has a big impact on your comfort and performance. Too hot or too cold, you can suffer badly and your concentration is impacted and could lead to a fall. Lightweight summer gloves would have made a big difference on this trip, and I've subsequently invested in some for next time. After nearly 8 minutes, I am relieved that I can now get going again. After one last check. When you are exhausted, your mental processes are much slower and everything takes longer to do. Nothing hanging off or broken, we can get mobile. A quick conversation with Richard to explain my delay. Falls are a part of any rider's experience, even Richard's. Anyway, enough time has been wasted, so we need to get on with our ride. These forest trails are easy going compared to the stony single track we travelled earlier. Having followed the man in front for several thousand kilometres now, I always feel good when I am naturally keeping pace with him. I never intend to keep him in sight, I ride in my own comfort zone. I think it's important not to ride too close, as the unpredictability of the trails can lead to a rear end shunt and render both bikes and riders damaged. You never know what or when you will meet other vehicles on the trails, but bear in mind that it is inevitable, so always ride to the visibility that you have. Despite being relatively dry early on, the trails are becoming a little wetter in places, as you can see from the shine on the front tyre. We have covered another 1.5 kilometres, and the train appears to be opening up, so I'm hoping the progress will be much better going forward. But thanks to an unexpected camera shut-off, we have to leave you now, and we'll pick up the trail about 200 metres further on in part 3. Thanks for watching.